Greetings, traveler. I am Sir Knox of Irving. I am to assume you sat down to hear a tale. Well, here is one you might enjoy. This one is called, can we just call it what it is? New players with distorted expectations. I'm going to preface this by saying that this isn't a full-on horror story so much as commentary wrapped up inside a Halloween episode level horror story. I'll also say that I'm a fan of Critical Role as both a form of entertainment and as a form of D&D inspiration. Watching it has really helped me develop storytelling skills. Honestly, it converted me from being a railroading DM who would panic when players did something unexpected into a DM who enjoyed thinking on the fly. Something about the way Matt pauses, rubs his hands together, shows a moment of confusion before excitement and says, "Okay," when one of the players, read Sam and Laura, goes completely off the expected path made me realize the fun in not knowing where things were going. All that said, I had my first encounter with the Mercer effect. Cue thunder and lightning effect. I was DMing a one-shot online with a mix of friends that I've played D&D with online and offline, a couple of new players. Our cast as follows. Me, the Dungeon Master. Mark, an online D&D friend playing Monk. Bill, brother-in-law with a game or two under his belt playing Wizard. Cindy, sister, same experience as Bill playing a rogue, first time not playing a cleric. Nina, sister's friend who, when asked if she wanted to play, said akin to, "That's the game with the little statues and the weird dice, right?" Playing a fighter. Joxer, the antagonist of this story, a new player who was introduced to the game by looking up Joe Manganiello's workout routine, found Jock McKenna, and then Critical Role, playing a war cleric with traps for days. A little background on Joxer. We met playing a video game online, and when he invited me to another round, I decided to work on D&D stuff. He went from a cool bro to an excited, untrained Labrador whose toy you were holding instantly. He told the other people we had been playing with to go on without him. One thing leads to another, and I sent him an invite to my Discord server. He was the last to join. Instead of a proper session 0, since it was a one-shot, I made my expectations known in chat, and we discussed character creation in chat. Me and Mark worked with others to build characters and make sure everyone knew the rules. Joxer, singing the part composition, said, "No one is playing a cleric. We need a cleric." I simply said that we addressed that I was giving everyone a few healing potions. Since it was a one-shot, I wasn't worried. The monk was trained in medicine in the worst-case scenario. He isn't buying it and says, "Fine, I'll play a cleric." We were still in voice chat, so I could hear the huff that signaled his excitement deflating. This was maybe a seed of a red flag. As the game approached, Nina messaged me asking about clerics and wondering if she should change to cleric since she is new. Apparently, Joxer had been messaging her telling her she changed to cleric because new players should play clerics, and that fighters aren't very good. She had been excited about playing a fighter because it seemed simple enough, and she was into Hema. I reassured her that fighter was a fine class, and if she wanted to play a cleric she could, but not to change for those reasons. I spoke with Joxer to see if he wanted to play a fighter instead, but he came back to, "We need a cleric. Someone needs to heal." I let him know that there were other options for healing thanks to certain subclasses, but he stubbornly insisted. In retrospect, I probably should have come up with a reason to boot him here, but nothing was particularly bad yet. And in chat, he had been funny and personable and was even giving us some exercise tips to do during quarantine. Dude has a fitness channel on YouTube. Very low sub count, but he enjoys it, so power to him. And he obviously knows what he's talking about. I may have also been developing a very slight crush on him, but since he was a straight guy and I'm not a straight man, I obviously didn't let that take up any emotional real estate, but maybe I also didn't see other signs of trouble ahead because of that. The game night comes and I reiterate some expectation from earlier in the group's conversation. This was going to be a single game with a short adventure, so I will be nudging you guys towards certain plot points. Role-playing is encouraged. I might streamline some elements of non-adventure related interactions. I will be doing some voices, but I am not Matt Mercer. And some of them may sound similar, so I will try to be clear about who is speaking. Did a lot of conversations in third person if it was a minor character. You know, the shopkeep tells you that the tax collector has a mistress. Instead of speaking as a shopkeeper giving juicy gossip, things got off to a rocky start. Me. The caravan you have been assigned to guard has been traveling through the golden wheat fields for several days. You had packed up camp just a few hours ago and still rising sun cast a glow on the fields that almost made them seem to glitter in the sunlight. The last part I never got to say. Joxer interrupts. Wait, we're out in a field? We're not in town? No, remember, I said you would be playing people hired to help guard a small caravan as it traveled to a larger trading town. But I was going to buy drinks at the tavern. I wrote this off as maybe him feeling nervous and having prepared something he wanted to do. I had a what would Mercer do moment. Maybe this isn't what he would do, but it did prevent me from arguing with Joxer and give him a chance to do his tavern roleplay. I continue. Thankfully, this caravan belongs to Darren Gobblerbane, the half-dwarf heir to the Firestone Distillery. At night, they set up a makeshift tavern when the shop for lunch at camp. Again, I didn't get to say the last part before he interrupted me. Half-dwarf? That's not a race. They are rare in most parts of the world, but they do exist. Can I change my race to half-dwarf? He was currently a Goliath. It won't change your statistic, and this is highly unusual, but sure, you can put down that you are half-dwarf. Well, then I need to rebuild my whole character. We won't go that far. We will just say that you're a half-dwarf for role-playing sake. I get inspired as a half-dwarf. Would you like to be related to Darren or be associated with the Firestone Distillery? Nope. Okay then. I changed things up a bit to give them a camping/tavern scene earlier than expected, essentially turning day 1, where the adventure was supposed to begin, into day 0, the day before it was supposed to begin. As they traveled, I had each of them describe their characters and probed a little bit to get them to share something that the party might have picked up. Mark said that others might have noticed at a camp he take particularly good care of his extremely long beard and the extremely long hair he keeps under his turban. Mark used a Russian accent while describing his monk, taking inspiration from Diablo 4. Bill and Cindy put a little twang in their voice, considering we live in the South didn't take much to sell it, and were playing a married couple who grew bored with the domestic life and after a run-in with a bandit got a thrill from the danger and heroics, and have been chasing that high ever since. Then, Nina described her character. She said, I don't have a voice or anything, but... Joxer interrupts. Makes a noise like the air being released from a half-deflated balloon. Excuse you. I didn't make rude noises when you kept interrupting the DM, so shut it. At this point, that little crush I might have had for Joxer fully disappeared, and I began seeing Nina in a new light in my not straight, not gay self, starting, wondering how to ask her out afterwards. Joxer says, obviously a little shocked. I mean, you have to do a voice to roleplay. I about to interject, but Nina was already. Nope, I may not know the rules, but very well I know that it isn't a rule. She then continues to describe her character and explains that the others would have noticed that she has been fun to be around, but don't take anyone's crap, whether directed at her or a friend. Then it was Joxer's turn. Before I continue, I will reiterate, if it isn't clear, that I don't think you have to have an accent or adopt new mannerisms while roleplaying, and if you make an effort to do so, all the better, even if it's not the best. Joxer, though, after what he said to Nina, should have had a little more self-awareness. Following the cues of Mark, Bill, and Cindy described his character while speaking in the character's voice. Mark already had a deep, clear voice, but his character sounded like he was doing an impression of someone with a deep voice. It almost Sylvester Stallone, but if he had a mouthful of potatoes. But give him Shatner, like timing. A bold choice is better than no choice. Again, making the attempt is awesome, but then getting upset when people ask you to repeat what you said because you made some voice choice that made your character almost impossible to understand is something different, especially after mocking someone for choosing not to do a voice when they just started to learn what D&D was less than a month ago. So the camping/tavern scene comes along. Maybe this would smooth things out. He wanted a tavern scene. Cool, here it is. What did he have planned? To drink until he was unconscious? While the other players were chatting with NPCs and with each other, arm wrestling and dancing, Joxer just kept drinking. Now he seemed happy about just drinking, and it really seemed like that was his plan all along. I asked for constitution saves at certain points to see how tanked everyone was getting. I even gave Joxer advantage as a, but not really, half-dwarf. Even with advantage, his checks could not keep up with the volumes he was drinking, and I warned him that at this rate he would probably be feeling the effects in the morning. The other players and NPCs tried to get him involved. Well, cool then. At least he is having fun. Like, I didn't want to railroad that hard, but being interrupted during my description twice, and then me changing my introduction up to accommodate what he wanted only for him to sit there drinking, I take a breath, remember that he seems to be having fun, and all the other players are having fun. It's a win. I can roll with the rest of the story, even if the flow got a little wonky there. I only emphasize that I created the whole camp/tavern scene for him, and he did the least interactive thing he could do in the situation. The next day, I have them make some of them one more constitution save. Joxer passes, so he has a hangover, but not too bad of a one if he failed. He asks if there's any way to get rid of it. I respond, as a pretty raucous caravan that throws almost nightly parties, you know that there is a woman who sells herbs that will ease the hangover. She's easy enough to find and is already disturbing them among people she thinks need them. She gives you a sly, knowing smile and says, "Would have thought you were a dwarf, the way you handled your drink last night." Joxer responds, "I'm a Goliath." I really didn't want to make the session more awkward than it was becoming with his constant questioning. At least I didn't get interrupted this time, but apparently the others were getting a bit fed up. Bill chimed in. "Remember you said you wanted to be a half-dwarf instead? And he said you could roleplay as one, but we weren't getting to wait for you to remake the character," Joxer says. "Well, since I didn't rebuild it, I didn't accept it." Mark chimes in. "You didn't say that. We all assumed you were role-playing as a half-dwarf now." Cindy then says, "Weren't you rolling those saves with advantage because you are half-dwarf?" Nina then chimes in, "Yes, he was. I even asked if that was why he was rolling the with advantage." "Well, I'm a Goliath." Deep breaths, slow deep breaths. Me. No worries. No worries. The herbs help you all the same. As the camp is getting packed up. "That's it? I don't get to haggle with her for the herbs?" No, she's just handing them out for free as the camp is getting packed up. "I don't get to roleplay with her or anyone else at all." There have been plenty of opportunities for you to just drink them, though. We have to move on or we won't get anywhere with this adventure as the camp is getting packed. "That's not fair. I thought there would be more time." That is fine. Maybe in a future game that isn't a one-shot, we can really explore the social interactions more. But we have already spent an hour on this and we need to move on as the camp is getting packed up. But I didn't even get into my backstory. As the camp, but party as a whole. Dude, stop it! I really didn't want to kick a new player during a one-shot, but I would be lying if I didn't say my finger was hovering over the button to do it. Again, I put on my trained-in-diplomacy hat and try to defuse the situation. I tell him, "I get it. It's not what you were expecting. In a one-shot, things are a bit more streamlined to get you into the action. I'd really like to keep playing with you, and maybe next time we play, we can really do more. It's not always going to be like Critical Role, where nearly every NPC has a unique and deep personality, because particularly in a one-shot, we're just trying to explore a specific scenario. Maybe next time." So as the Joxer then says, "You will never be Matt Mercer." Now, at this point, I had already said I am no Matt Mercer, as a little self-deprecating joke, and even explained how this sort of game would be different than the main campaigns of Critical Role, and restated the expectations multiple times. I took a brief moment to debate kicking him. Really hadn't given a direct warning, but he had more than enough chances. But Nina chimed in. "And you are not Travis." "You noob!" And he was kicked. We all knew that C word he was about to say. Apparently, Nina started watching Critical Role since me, Mark, and Joxer all talked about it, and she thought it would help her understand things better. After that, the camp was finally being packed up, and Mark caught a brief sight of something streaking towards the camp. An arrow, followed by dozens more, all hitting Joxer, who hadn't taken the anti-hangover herb yet and thus couldn't defend properly. And then a second volley, with targets picked at random this time. The party successfully fought off the raiders, tracked them down to retrieve the caravan members that had been kidnapped, and found themselves in the middle of the gold hoard of a dead red dragon, fighting cultists who wanted to raise the red dragon from the dead and needed sacrifices to do it. Remember the foreshadowing mentioned before? Them traveling through the glistening dew-dropped speckled golden wheat fields? I would have described the fiery red band of sunlight on the horizon that seemed to encircle them, as the dead red dragon's body would later. Would have been cool if I had gotten that out without being interrupted. Anyway, that is my story. In a lot of ways, the story is more about two players, each only having experience vicariously through Critical Role, but with two different outlooks on it. One was more self-aware, accepting that they lacked the experience to truly know what to expect beyond the expectations set by the person in charge. The other treated DMing almost like a competition, having described Matt Mercer as the Michael Jordan of DMs, which at the time I probably agreed with. But after this experience, I realized that the analogy doesn't work. Because while DMing is a skill and one I want to get better at, it's not like I'm competing with other DMs to be better than them. I would like to think that if Matt and the rest of the Critical Role crew sat down at my table, they would have fun. Not like if I played basketball against Jordan, where I would just get steamrolled, and it wouldn't be much fun for anyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story. That is the completion. If you would like another, please come back next time to hear another tale.